Thank you all. You could all just come in and take a seat. We'll just get through some presentations and then we'll be into lunch. If you can find a seat, that would be good. Okay, thank you everybody. We're going to make a start. For anyone who is coming up to speak at different points, I do ask that you have to speak into the microphone quite closely to ensure we get the amplification so that everyone can hear. Welcome, and it's wonderful to have you all here to share in this event with us, to welcome the Forbes family into our midst. To kick off the pre-luncheon activity, I'm going to ask the session clerk to come up. He's got some announcements and some messages, I believe, to read out to you.
It's my turn, is it, Glenn?
Absolutely.
Again, a great welcome. I have received quite a number of messages. My intention is to read the names, but not all the messages, because I've printed them out, and they are principally to John and Mary, and I'll pass them over to John and or Mary after. The one from Reverend Gordon Mayer has already been read by David at the presbytery meeting. He sent two messages to me, but they were incorporated in the presbytery proceedings. Two others from Scotland. John passed one over to me this morning, came this morning from Ewan Matheson, the Free Church minister, and he sent special greetings direct to John. Another one is from John Mann. John Mann is the session clerk of the Bonar and Leg Free Church. John sent two messages to me. I'm going to read those. First one was a week or so ago. Dear Doug, I've got to mention. Little did I expect to get an email from Australia this morning, but thanks for the invitation. I'll pass it on to the folk here, but somehow I doubt that any of us will get over it. Though after yesterday, damp, cold, foggy days, the prospect of a few days in Australia in the spring and summer is appealing. In fact, we're all hoping that you, or John, will have a change of heart between now and then, on the 24th, and that John will come back. I didn't tell John that in advance. Joking aside, I hope that everything goes smoothly with the arrival and settling in, and that those next few months and the years that follow will bring much encouragement to the Hastings congregation. Regards, John. A second one that came in on Friday night. Dear Doug, again. Could I be permitted on behalf of the congregation of Bonar and Leg Free Church to send greetings to you on the occasion of what will be a very happy and exciting event for the Hastings congregation. We at Bonar and Leg have been praying for this induction and for John's ministry among you, and will continue to do so. May his time there be a time of much blessing for John and the family, for the Hastings congregation, and may his ministry there bring lasting spiritual blessing to many who are not yet part of the Hastings River Church. Every blessing, John Mann. That was the session clerk of John's previous congregation. They are the Scottish ones. Yeah, as the responses came in, it's quite, I printed them out, as I said, and I'll give those to John. He may elect to do what's necessary with them after that. But in the order in which I received replies, I might mention the replies weren't requested by the invitation, nor was an RSVP, but people have elected to do so, and that's great. From Stuart and Christina Carswell from Brisbane, they're both here. Stuart's part of Presbytery. From Ray Murray and Roberta Murray. Now, Ray sent 2 messages. One was a special greeting, which I'll pass on, but the second one came this morning. Ray is unwell, and Roberta and Ray send their apology for not being able to be with us today, and they very much wanted to be here. I shouldn't have printed on both sides of the paper. From Daphne Salt and Jeanette Rainbow, they are from the Historical Society here in Wauchope. They both send their apologies, but hope that we will send them some images and messages to incorporate in the archives of the Historical Society. I think they can do that all right. From Andres Miranda, Andres has sent a couple on behalf of his congregations for which he is interim moderator, and they are printed here. From Roland Ward, a similar one to what David read out from Karen Brown in the church. From Ian Hamilton, session clerk of the Ulverston PCA Tasmania, sends a special message which is printed out here. And from Wendy Hutchins of Wauchope, apology, she was hoping to, it's my daughter by the way, she was hoping to come, but family problems have arisen and can't make it today. So they are the names of the people who responded, and that big group of things I can pass over to John. If you need email addresses for any of those, John and Mary, I can supply them. I think that's all then. You want to keep it brief, don't we? Or do you want me to read the lot?
Thank you. Very well done. Shortly, I will open it up for anyone who does wish to say a couple of words. One person that I'm keen to hear from is Robin So I might pass it over to you, Robin, to say a few words.
Well, thank you, and it's good to be here. And dear brothers and sisters and friends, well, to be able to stand here, to have this privilege to give this speech at John's induction to the Hastings Church is indeed the Lord's gracious answer to many, many prayers. And if I do describe how I'm feeling, a lot of feelings, a lot of thoughts, excitement, words cannot fully describe. But I'm truly grateful to the Lord for His wondrous works in bringing it all about. Yeah. And the verse that comes to my mind is Psalm 118, verse 23. This was the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes. And personally, I just cannot believe this. Who would have thought a Highlander whom I met 13 years ago at what was then the Free Church College is now a colleague of mine in the gospel ministry, in the same country, same denomination, and even the same state. John, I think you would agree with me.
Almost the same language.
True. If we ask each other the question about serving the Lord in Australia 13 years ago, I'm sure we would say to each other, what are you talking about? And there were a few things that I still can remember quite well about John at the college. For one thing, he was the only student who travelled daily from Glasgow to Edinburgh, an hour each way. And the train wasn't always on time. And so among the students, we sometimes said to each other, is John going to turn up today? And John, correct me if I'm wrong, I think one day you came to the college, you looked like you have fallen into a ditch, or you have been through some heavy mining work. And John was always the one student at college who would take off his wedding ring, and spin it around. And yes, it was lost a few times. And I remember, at that time as a single man, I thought to myself, I would never do that myself when I get married. And to my own shame, I have done it once or twice or more in my life. And also, John and I had a theological debate, if you recall, one afternoon organized by the Student Society at the college, and it was an experience, to say the least. But that is not all that I can remember John as a student at the college. One thing that really stood out so remarkably, and still to this very day, which I thank the Lord for, is that John is a man of principle. Someone who is not willing to bow to the pressure of the world and others at the expense of the truth. And I'm sure many among us already know that about John. He is so very easy to get along with, but he is also a man of conviction, a God-fearing man. And John is someone who would go the extra mile for others. And I am speaking from personal experience, as my wife Vanessa and myself received so much of the kindness and the love from both John and Mary, especially our last time in Scotland. And Mary is a generous and a great cook, by the way. And I'll tell you some of the examples. I even had venison for breakfast one morning and seafood at midnight. And in fact, John also became my personal chauffeur, driving me to all the general assemblies of all the denominations in Scotland, between Lairg and Edinburgh, 3 or 4 times within the 1 week. Yes, even if that means going back to Lairg at 2:30 in the morning. And I'm so thankful that the Hastings congregation in particular will know more of that willingness and that love to serve from both John and Mary. But at this point, I must apologize to John and Mary for more than 2 years of harassment in forms of emails and phone calls, especially phone calls on a Tuesday. You know, sometimes I wonder if John or Mary would contact BT, British Telecom, to block that particular Australian number, calling it telemarketing. And yes, those calls weren't short either, as a number of folks here among us may know that by personal experience. And I remember one time I felt so guilty afterwards. John and I were on the phone for more than 3 hours, I would say that. And Mary at that time was on Lewis. And John said, "Sorry, Robin, I have to go. I need to feed my kids." And indeed, the frequency of phone calls increased as I gathered that the call was issued. And I mentioned to John that it was like someone in history, William Farrell, asking John Calvin to stay in Geneva. And those of us who know of that bit of church history well, we may even remember Farrell said to Calvin, "May God curse you and your studies if you do not join me here in the work he has called you to do." Well, I did not go as far as that. But indeed, putting the jokes aside, this is not man's doing. This is the Lord's doing. That John has been inducted to this charge. And I'm sure many would agree with me here that many fruits were seen already, even during the family's first visit to Australia. And looking back, we should be amazed by the wise providence of the Lord. And this very day serves really as a token and as a reminder of the Lord's graciousness, of the Lord's faithfulness, not only to the Hastings congregation here, but indeed to our denomination, that the Lord is still pleased to walk among the candlesticks of our churches. And John, 13 years ago, you and I both thought that we would be serving in Scotland for the rest of our ministerial life. But the Lord's plan and His ways are higher and wiser. Though we are in a different land with much better, warmer weather, we are so blessed to serve in a denomination that embraces the same doctrines, practices, founded and principles founded upon the Word of God. The same commitment to the Westminster Confession of Faith, as well as being blessed with the same Free Church forefathers and heritage, seeking to maintain the crown rights and to proclaim the gospel of the only Redeemer. Well, John and Mary, on behalf of my wife Vanessa, who is now in Canada visiting her brother's first child, with Lauren, my daughter, I want to say how delighted and how thankful we are in the Lord for the fact that friends and colleagues have been brought closer, much closer to home. And so may the Lord bless you richly, both you yourselves and your children here in the Hastings, by His grace. And yes, I have no doubt that you will soon call this wonderful land your home, just as I do with my wife.
covered in John and Mary and the family, I was able to present them with some keys for their new car. Well, I'm happy to present you also today another set of keys. This is the set of keys for all the church buildings that you can open up and be well prepared. Thank you, John.
Well, everyone said they're going to be brief. I do have a little bit to say. I knew I was going to get the last word. Thank you very much for your gifts. Thank you for taking me fishing that time. I don't sail well. I know that. It was a nice day. And thank you. Well, there's so many thank yous to be said. We really have felt welcomed here. We felt welcome the last time when we came out just for a visit, and we felt welcome this time. So it's going to be too numerous to mention all the things that I have to say thank you for. But I do want to mention a few people first of all, and welcome them. I want to welcome Lynn and Mike sitting here. These are the representatives of my blood relations here in Australia. So they're being my mummy and daddy today because my mummy and daddy can't make it. They've come down from Cox Harbour, so we're delighted to have Lynn and Mike here. And there's other people that we met last time that really made our last visit such a full time, and we enjoyed it so much. And some of them are here today. I'd like to mention Alison. We call her Alison from Arunga. Where's Alison? Yeah, up there. So we met Alison and her mother by complete chance at Ybor Falls, and turned out we're Christians, and we have 5 kids, and she has 5 or 6 kids. And Alison said, "Why don't you just come stay at my house?" So we'd only met her for a few minutes, and we got an invite, and we went and stayed at her house a few weeks later. So it's really nice that Alison is here, and we don't think these things are by chance. These things are providence, and so it's lovely to have Alison and Val, her mother, here with us. I don't know if is Matt still here? Right, so Matt was here. I was going to mention Matt, but he's not here. Matt's a leader in the Baptist church, and he babysat for us and gave us meals, and it was a delight to meet Matt. I was going to embarrass him by telling everyone that his name is Matthew Martin Charles Taylor, because everyone seems to want to call me John Charles Alexander Forbes, but everyone calls him Matt, and you can call me John. The Chumleys, Ali and Andy, Lewis and Curtis, delight to have you guys here. The kids have kept in Skype contact with the Chumleys. It was a delight to meet you last time and keep in contact and see you again. And I could mention so many people from the congregation. We went back home and we said we were here for 9 weeks. We've been in Scotland in our charge there for 9 years, and we could count on one hand how many times, probably on a few fingers actually, how many times in Scotland people have had our whole family over for meals. And here, so many of you had us over for meals and tea and hospitality. Trevor, well, a lot of thanks have gone to Trevor. Trevor's helped Port here the last few years, and Trevor and Pamela gave us one of our first tastes of Australia. They hosted us on their farm. Trevor took us on his little tractor up to the top of a hill where we got our first view of your great dividing range. It was impressive. I still remember that day, and thank you for your hospitality. David and Mandy, we went up to visit you in Maclean. We said, we'll come for a day, maybe 2 nights, and we just loved spending time with your family. You were probably glad to get rid of us by the end, but we stayed 4 nights. And so thank you for your hospitality that time. And anyway, I'm going to end the list there. Michelle, I was going to mention Michelle, but glad she's already been mentioned. It's a delight to have Michelle here, who knows more about me and my family than any of you. She has read all the paperwork. If you want to probably better to ask Michelle. There's quite a lot of paperwork that's gone through her hands. Some to the congregation, I want to say, and then something to my brother ministers in the PCA. To the congregation, it's a big thing for us to move across the world. You know, it wasn't just something that we just said, oh yeah, let's just do it. You know, we'll be reckless. It was a big deal. But you have shown us such kindness beforehand when we met you, in the whole process of moving, and since we've arrived. You've shown us that you value us. And, you know, I don't want to make a big deal of the things that we've given up, you know, but there's bonds, there's family, there's friends. We had a lovely congregation in Scotland, and it was a hard decision. I'm grateful for the correspondence I've been able to have with some of you and the brothers on Presbytery as well. Just at this point, let me mention Robin, who you've heard a lot from already. But you know, there was a question in there that I had to answer. Have you used any undue means to obtain this call? Well, I haven't.
Undue means we maybe used on you, but
Robin has used every undue means that you've got in the book. He tried to bribe us with nice weather and talking everything up. He used harassment. He was phoning us non-stop. He used charm. He used hospitality. It is a delight to be here with my brother Robin. And strange to think that this is how it's ended up. That we're here on the same continent that we didn't either of us think that we would be on. Anyway, I was talking about the congregation. We've left some things behind, but you have really made it easy for us. You know, in some ways people say it's a big deal, and we've said, actually it's not been that big a deal. You've really made it easy for us. And there's work that's gone on in the background, and you've showed your commitment. I was thinking about it when Trevor said to you certain things about how you to treat your pastor, and I thought, you know, you've already shown such a commitment to us. I was handed the keys of a brand new car when we arrived. I've never driven a brand new car before. The extensions to the manse to accommodate us. I mean, these are big investments. Even just getting us across the world, the immigration process, these are big investments. And it shows us that you are committed to this call, and it certainly makes us easier for us. And we do look forward to being part of your church family. And I want to say something to my brother ministers and fellows, colleagues in Presbytery and in the wider PCEA. Paul said to Timothy that the church is the pillar and bulwark of the truth. You know, there's certain truths, and God has given it particularly to the church to preserve these truths, because they won't always be popular, and they won't always be, you know, they might end up being obscure truths sometimes, and if the church doesn't uphold these truths, then who's going to uphold them? Now I know that there are many churches and many believers who seek to uphold the core truths of the gospel, and there are certain truths that you uphold in the PCA, that we seek to uphold, that are, well, I suppose, well, I think they're very important truths, but I suppose they're considered obscure these days. You know, some things are a bit of a minority position these days. It wasn't always that way. I think this denomination holds truths that were once widespread, that once shaped nations, that once united churches and unified nations in the gospel. And